Welcome back to the Church Law Podcast. My name is Erika Cole, and I'm happy to be your podcast host. I'm the creator of the Faithful Foundations membership, where church leaders gather to collaborate and grow as leaders. Join other church leaders and get on the wait list using the link in the show notes. Today, we are continuing to move around the life cycle of a church, which has been an amazing theme for this season, and I appreciate your fantastic feedback. It's so appropriate that we're talking about seasons of change in this episode, as the calendar has literally changed to a new season. You'll love hearing from our guest today, who knows all about the changing roles of the senior pastor and executive pastor. This is what we're talking about today. So as churches grow in worship attendance and budget, the role of the senior pastor changes also. The senior pastor in a church plant, for example, is a Jack or Jill of all trades. Soon, though, the role begins to narrow. They can't do everything anymore. Staff needs to be hired, volunteers need training, HR issues are crazy and detailed. Legal issues, which we talk all about here, are in every youth contract or equipment purchase. Then, of course, there is the loved and dreaded building program. You know all about that. The senior pastor needs to know what they do best and focus on that for the greatest good of the congregation, themselves, and their families. So in today's episode, we'll explore when to hire an executive pastor and what that role can do to help the senior pastor survive and thrive. When you're talking about executive pastors, there's probably one name that really comes to mind, and that is Dr. David Fletcher, or Fletch, as he's often called. He has been known as the Dean of Executive Pastors and was himself a pastor for 35 years in churches ranging in size from 1,000 to 8,000 members. He's been a part of single and multi-site churches, churches with mergers, camps, schools, apartments, and cafes. He founded XPastor in 2003, and its free articles from hundreds of authors have become a principal resource for leaders in a complex church world. With degrees from Dallas Seminary and executive education at the Kellogg School of Management and the Harvard Business School, he brings an objective perspective, vast experience, biblical principles, and best practices. He teaches Doctor of Ministry students at Dallas Seminary and ETF's India, and has written books and scores of articles for national publications. With his wife, Tammy, he loves to walk the hills near their home in Austin, Texas, and Fletch loves to scuba dive in rivers, lakes, missile silos, and the world's oceans. Plus, he loves to row 10 Ks each day. That sounds like a busy, full, and fulfilled life. Welcome to the Church Law Podcast, Fletch.
Thank you, Erika. Boy, that intro just said it all. I mean, let's just say amen. We're done, right?
No benediction yet.
Okay. Well, I did get my row in this morning and it was
Yay.
delightful, and that helped me wake up, and I'm ready.
All right. Well, we're ready for you. I'm glad that you're here. I have been looking forward to this discussion for weeks, so I'm really glad that we were able to connect today. So, you know that we've been talking about this life cycle of church, and often that begins as a brand new church, right? A baby church, a church plant. So, this we often find pastors are in the position of founder. They really have the heart, the vision from God of creating this new thing, right? So they are finding and equipping volunteers, they're unlocking the doors, they're planning for the future. Hopefully, they are engaging some sort of legal process so that they are incorporated and they're working with their church board. So, just thinking about all of these things can be an overload. But what's been your experience when we talk about church plants and what that beginning seed looks like?
Well, to begin in your wheelhouse, you have to get good legal counsel
Yeah.
at every stage of the church. You know, churches of all sizes are sued and do things incorrectly, and they really need help. You know, when I think about the church plant and Jack or Jill, is planting it, I'm tired just thinking about the workload. I mean, it is, you better be young and vigorous and have a great team.
I love that. Yeah, because we really talk about that beginning with the vision, right? But a part of the vision is having the idea of what the future could look like. And
That's
when we started this series, The Life Cycle of the Church, we're talking with a pastor that was, I think they were maybe 2 years in. And even in that window of time, you have to make adjustments. You've got to be very agile. You've got to be prepared to adjust as things go along and really try to get the help that you need early on. Is that right?
that's it. The hard thing in the church plant is you still have to deliver a really great message.
Mm,
Creating a message for a good sized church, but really you need it in the church plant too, can take 20 hours a week between study, preparation, and delivery. You always have to count that delivery time. So, if you're working 40 to 50 hours a week, you only have 30 hours a week to do other things. So it is just chaos in motion, and you don't want that message, which is how you're going to communicate biblically and create vision for where the church is to go. You don't want that to founder. You don't want it to hit a shoal, hit a reef. So you're always doing a balancing act in the church plant.
no, that's really, really good. And God willing, we move from that process of the plant, right? So if we use the same concept of a plant, we're watering it, we are giving it sunlight, right? And we're just trusting that God gives the increase. So then we move around this life cycle and we look toward the growing church. And I am very much of the perspective that every church is not going to see thousands of members, right? But we do anticipate a level of growth. So maybe you start with a plant with a handful of people, and then maybe, God willing, they bring in more families, and then that begets more families, right? So we get ourselves to more of a growing church. Now, from the pastoral view, you probably have also increased the size of your staff. So how would you describe that growing church?
Well, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a pastor recently, and they planted a church. In the first 4 weeks of their church plant, nobody came. So then they rebooted. 10 years later, they're like 1,500 people. And that sounds wonderful, but let's talk about a church of like 500. You might have 10 plus people on staff when you count part-timers. So now you have HR issues, the budget may be $750,000. You want the board to ensure good fiduciary practices and finances and personnel. People still want those great sermons. The children's program always needs more helpers. The website needs attention, and the weekly sermon needs posting. Am I out of breath yet? So really, we're looking at Acts 6 beginning right here. So Acts 6 is when the apostles said, we shouldn't be doing everything that we're doing. And we're going to offload this to a group of skilled men and women. Luke calls them, they're diaconizing. That is, they're not really deacons there, but they're kind of like it. They're literally serving the tables. And Luke says the job of the elders or the leader is to diaconize the word, to serve the word at the spiritual table. It's a great little play. Luke does this all the
Mhm.
time. Um, and so people want to watch online. They're thinking of those, especially those who are thinking of attending. We can never forget the online because that's how a lot of visitors are first going to get introduced to your church, see if it's a safe place, a good place to be. Um, the church started off as a tight family, but now you have two services, and you think at 500 that you know everyone, but it's like a growing family when you don't see everyone at the dinner table anymore. They're family, but somewhere. And so you get a great family feel, but there's a lot of pressure. Staff don't decrease pressure, they actually increase pressure at the top because now you have people to manage and they're coming to you with bigger and bigger decisions that need to be made. Many churches in the 500 to 1,000 realm are beginning to think about an XP, an executive pastor, to help offload a lot of this workload so the pastor can continue to focus. It's like the old statement about the academic, maybe you know it. The role in a PhD is to learn more and more about less and less until you know everything about nothing. But that's kind of like what the senior pastor does. You have to do more and more, but you're focusing on less and less key points. And that's really the beginning of change that needs to happen with the senior pastor as the church grows. Otherwise, your marriage is going to end on the rocks. You're going to die from overwork. You're not going to take one day off in 7, principle from creation. So you need to begin to focus and offload this work to key staff who will help manage the church for you.
I love how you said, David, the reality that when you hire people, when you start bringing on a team, when you start increasing the number of volunteers, it, in theory, lessens your work as the senior
Right.
pastor, but the reality is that it also does add this perspective of needing to manage people. And I think we all agree that some of the greatest stressors come from the reality of managing people. So I think that that consideration is really big. But I heard you say that this is often the season when churches find that it's time to bring in an executive pastor. And
The-
can you describe a little bit of what those sentiments are? Like, how would a church see, how would they identify in that this is the time for them to bring in
well,
that help?
letters to new attendees don't get sent, or an email doesn't get sent to the new attendee.
Mm,
New donor letters don't go out on time. The budget doesn't get created on time. Staff members have questions that start piling up for a week or 2 weeks. And they're not hard questions. They just need a decision. Can we do this or not? Is this in line with our vision? There'll also sometimes be vision drift because the staff aren't being, I don't want to use the word managed, but led well. And so you have these pressures building and you're beginning to feel awkward and you can't do it all. And yet you're on this pedestal and people expect you to do it all. So the pressure really gets tremendous. And you need to find, it's like that pressure cooker, in the kitchen. You need to find that release valve
yeah.
to to let that pressure go.
Yeah, and doing that in a safe and productive way, right? Such as bringing in the necessary support. So
Right.
we'll continue going around this circle of life for the church, right? So we started as a plant, and then we're a growing church, and then maybe we get to this place where it's a larger church. The language that I think you've utilized is the extended family church. So it's over 500. And I think the language of what constitutes mega could certainly change, but let's just say we're looking at a church of 1,200 or so. How do you then see the season of change for a senior pastor and I guess an executive pastor once the church grows to that capacity?
So at 1200, the culture is really shifting. Because at 500, Eric, Erika, if you and I are in the same church, we all pretended like we knew each other, right?
Mhm.
I don't see you, you're at a different service, but I might see you at a church social and we talk, or we see you in the hallway. But 2 or 3 services, I'm just missing a lot of conversations. At 1200, it's really hard for newcomers to get connected. Just sending welcome letters is a challenge, and new donor letters and follow up. You have to have a thriving small group culture, or churches that have a big enough campus will have an adult class system. One of those is essential. The church will often begin to experiment with online teaching classes in small groups. So you may publish your content online and then you do live or online small groups to bring people together. But it gets back to the SP needs to focus on what he or she does best: preaching, vision casting, working with a select group of leaders. You still have to put in those 20 to 25 hours a week for study, preparation, and delivery of the weekly sermon. At this point, for the senior leader, the senior pastor, they need to find some type of ministry that they like doing. Doesn't have to be a lot of time, but if it's just all sermon and no contact with people, it will get dry really quickly. I knew a senior pastor of a church of 1,600, and he loved with his wife leading a small group of engaged and newly married couples. I knew another senior pastor, and every Friday, 2 hours a week, no more, he did hospital visitation. It's something to stay connected.
Mm.
Then if you have another senior leader, like an executive pastor, You need a very tight, close working relationship. A lot of stand-up meetings, a lot of hallway meetings, one formal meeting a week. The XP might run the staff, might work with transitions, training, overseeing the HR work, which, from your perspective, that's significant. Every camp contract should be reviewed, probably by legal counsel, unless it hasn't changed. Buying a new thing like a lease needs to be reviewed, and a lawyer should really review that for you because you're looking at a lot of money. You have got to create the budget. You got to work with the finance team. Oh, wait, you do have a finance team, right? So by offloading the work, again, in that spirit of Act 6, the senior pastor can focus on the greatest calling of communicating God's word to the people with a vision that is unique to that church, because you don't want a vision based in Dallas or Austin if you're in Minneapolis. What is it? Like Harvard Business School, they have the question, what exactly are we trying to accomplish here? That's question 0. Super easy question to ask, incredibly difficult to answer.
That's good.
What exactly are we trying to accomplish here? And that's the role of your top management, to use Peter Drucker's words, your top leaders in an organization, is how do we carry out that vision here? And at 1200, the culture has changed. People are feeling less connected. So you have to work on connection all the time.
No, that's really good. And listeners hear us reference SP as senior pastor, executive XP as executive pastor. And obviously that's where you really do so much great work. And I really think it's important that we continue with that distinction that I think you have shared very clearly, with the senior pastor focused on preaching, vision casting, working with a select group of leaders. I love the idea of finding an area of ministry and continuing to remain connected in that way, because I do think sometimes the senior pastor can feel disconnected and maybe make it more difficult to be able to cast the vision, because you got to be able to see where things are now in order to project, right? In order to anticipate that movement forward. And then the executive pastor really helping to run more of the day-to-day things. So helping with staff, hiring, firing, training, doing the HR work, connecting with legal counsel, all of those things. So to be able to distinguish those roles, even if a church is not prepared to go all in on an XP, if you think about really distinguishing those roles of more of the day-to-day running operational things and being able to shift that, I think that is a vision to consider at this growth level, right?
Yes, it is. The
Yeah.
event horizon for the senior pastor needs to be 18 months to 36 months. The event horizon for the executive pastor, or one in operations, the title doesn't matter, it's the work that matters,
Mm-hmm.
is 12 to 18 months. So they're looking at different event horizons on how to accomplish the vision that the senior leader has laid out.
No, I really love that. So if we continue going around this circle of growth, the church may find itself as a mega church. Now, I'm curious as to how you define that size. I feel like that can change over time, but the mega church may be a church that has more than one campus. They may have over 1,500 members in total, or partners, or however your church may define that. It may find itself really having multiple services. So I would love to hear, like, how do you apply these seasons of change when it comes to the mega church?
Well, the Hartford folks, Hartford Study of Religion, whatever it is, with Scott Thuma and Warren Bird, would define a megachurch at about 2,000 people.
Mhm.
Long gone are the days of knowing everyone, let alone knowing half of the congregation by name. Attenders tend to have just a small group of people that they connect with. So it's really a church of small groups. Your worship production requires a producer, because again, long gone are the days when Herod can be mispronounced as Herod and everyone laughs. At the big church, it's like, this is awkward. The church really expects broadcast quality services. Leadership development is critical. How to find and train new leaders, deacons, and other board members. Buildings have been built and need constant attention. Need close work with your insurance agent so you protect against slips and falls. I mean, it's the everyday things. The budget could be in the $3 to $5 million range. So we're dealing with a lot of nonprofit dollars, a lot of donated dollars. And that SP's focus just continues to be on leadership development and on vision casting, great preaching, because it's what we expect in a really large church, generosity. And then the XP and others are going to work on operations, on staff management, and how to carry out that vision in the church.
Yeah, so really we're talking about more people, but also probably more programs, probably a larger budget, and in some ways, the need to narrow in as a senior pastor. And I wonder if you see this as maybe one of the areas of challenge for some senior pastors, maybe who have been founders. I've seen that in my time, that they are accustomed to this broader role and maybe more touch points. But I'm hearing you say that at this stage, being more narrow is really critical to the ongoing growth.
Well, the interesting thing I learned a while back from the folks in the lending community is they want to see a plurality of strong leaders in a church so that if one person dies, messes up morally, or just leaves the church won't sink. So the more strong leaders that we have in a church, the more robust it is to continue on in the future, because no one's going to last in the church forever. So use your gifts. Uh, don't micromanage. The hard part that you were getting at, is it is hard to let go. When you've been the decision maker on everything, it's hard to become the decision maker on fewer things.
Mhm.
But that involves trust. Did you hire the right people? Are they trained well? Are they taking adequate rest? Are they healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically? Okay, then we can trust those people because they have God-given gifts. Let them go. Go and do it. And you can approve the big plans.
No, I really, really love that. As we are getting ready to land the plane, I'm loving this discussion, but I'm reminded of something I think very interesting that when we started the season, a pastor shared, and he said, Realize perfect solutions don't exist. Choose the problem you prefer to solve."
That's good.
And so I think that's so applicable here because we have to recognize that while we show up in our roles and do our very best, ultimately we are here as servants.
That's
And
right.
we're here as servants of God, number one, and servants of God's people, number two. And so we rely on Him to give us the direction and for fantastic resources such as what XP shares. So as we are wrapping up, do you have any final words that you want to share with our audience, Fletch?
Let's remember Moses. He had to learn it the hard way that he can't judge every case himself. His father-in-law had to come along, and
Jethro.
that's right, and say, "Hey, son, this puppy just isn't hunting. You're going to die." So here's a system, and they implemented it, and soon you only got the big cases, the hard cases. That's what we really need to focus on.
That's really, really good. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm glad that you got a chance to share with our listeners. I'm loving this season. I want to ask you one final question because our next episode is going to talk about what I think is quite a difficult topic, but maybe something that needs to be anticipated. And that is sometimes, as a part of this life cycle of the church, we have to recognize that maybe things aren't working as well. I would love to have you sort of speak into the future. If you are talking to that senior pastor, that executive pastor, and maybe they find themselves like many churches in America these days that are on the decline, what do you say to those leaders, given your background, given your heart? How would you encourage them at this time?
I would encourage them to go back to Harvard's question zero.
Mm,
What exactly are we trying to accomplish here? Size of church doesn't matter. There's the same problems in all the size churches we talked about. Bigger churches just have more of them. But legal and HR and building and budgets and sermons, etc. So I would say, what exactly are you trying to accomplish here? Not at Willow, not at some other big church, not at Mariners. What is it here? And then be true to that calling. Love the people well, serve them well, but lead them to green pastures. And then leave the results to God. But keep an eye on that vision. People love a sense of vision and direction, that they're part of something bigger than themselves, that they're part of God's movement in the world, and they're not just coming to church to have a great message and go home or go to lunch. What are we calling people to do with their lives?
That's so powerful. I really love all that you shared, Fletch. We'll look forward to sharing in the show notes some resources from XPastor. We appreciate all that you do there. And thank you so much, listeners. I appreciate that you are here, and we love being able to share information with inspiration with each of you. And we pray God's blessing as we continue along this journey. Bye.